This video is for those people who missed class on the 26th, our final class on Yayoosh Shelo Midat, and just a few things to consider before we get to it. So we just went through two Tashmas, Tashma 10 and 11, which had to do with kind of, I would say, ancillary ideas of basically if one emotion can be retroactive, what about other emotions? If the emotion of Hefker can be retroactive. Well, can the emotion of happiness or willingness be also retroactive? And we got through those, probably thinking that that even if it could be proven, the opposite could also be proven correct. That maybe those things don't necessarily move back in time. And I think Abaye probably comes out just as strong, and maybe even not stronger than Rava does in those situations. But one thing that I think we also need to understand as a push and pull of all of these tashmas have to do with the intention of the person and the siman of the object. If you remember, when we go back to the very first group, the first piece of Talmud on Lost and Found, a lot of it actually describing the amount that we can say, oh, a kav in arba amot. That is actually something that if I see that, I can actually go ahead and take it because the owner has despaired. Then we kind of talked a lot about how important the intention is of the owner. But then when we got into all these tashmas, we were talking much more about the siman on the object, and how the siman kind of complicates things a little bit, because with a siman, a person will always think they can get that object back, and with a siman, a person who finds it will always think that the owner is going to try to make a lot of effort to find it because they can prove that it's theirs. So we've thought all this time that every tashma we've been doing has always, that the big debate between Rava and Abaye was always about objects that had no siman. And Rava was always saying, oh, an object that does not have siman, the finder can take it, because even if the owner has not yet despaired, he will despair, or she will despair, when she finds out that it's lost. And Abaye says, no, it doesn't work like that. The only time you can take an object is when we're 100% certain that the owner has declared it, has despaired, has declared it hefker. And even in all the cases that you think, Rava, that you think support you, I can actually show you in those cases that there is either hefker is declared before the object is found, or kind of simultaneously as it's lost. So, right, or so it's always before the object is found. However, in this case here, the river that sweeps away the walls and the stones and places in the field of his friend, here we see things that have a siman on it, because it's you're watching it go away. You see that it's yours. It's going to a field of your friend, and a friend, that's someone actually who probably knows where those walls and woods and stones, who it belongs to. So all that seems very simani, and which we would say, and no one's going to disagree about the siman, that a siman will something with a siman will always belong to the loser, will never belong to the finder. And yet, in this case, we see actually there is a situation in this Breita where it's still, even if it has a siman, it still belongs to the finder. Why is that? Not because the siman has in some way been gone away, or been destroyed, but actually because the finder is just not going to make the effort. He sees it go, and it's like, it's just way too hard. So there are situations where even if it does have a siman, the finder is going to say, no, it can belong to the owner, to the finder. Where the loser can say it can belong to the finder. And also, so again, we're going into this final tashma with a sense of, if an object does not have a siman, Rava is always going to say, you can own, the finder can have that object, because even if the person has not declared hefker yet, they will, once they figure out it's gone, they will. And the only reason they haven't declared hefker is because they don't know it's gone quite yet. And Abaye is always going to say, no. I also believe that something with siman will be held by the finder, can be kept by the finder, but only because the loser has already declared it hefker, or when they've lost it, there's the moment between losing and declaring and figuring out that it's gone is so minuscule and small that the finder who finds it is always going to find it after the person has declared that it's hefker, right? Okay, and now but here, so this is an object with no siman. But what about this object right here? What's the problem with this object? And this is my question number one today. What's the problem with this object? And how does that problem change if I know that? And we're going to say this object has no siman. But how does that change what's the problem that happens when this object, when I look up on Amazon that this is a $2.50 bear? Okay, but question number three is, what if now I know, or the loser of this object knows that this is a bear that was given to them by her mom, that who and her mom was given this bear by her grandma, and her grandma was given this bear by her great great grandma. What does that change? That even though there's no siman, what does that change? That's question number three. And hopefully all of the things that you've answered in some way point out that even when something doesn't have a siman to the finder, the loser may have thought that there is a siman. The loser may not give up hope. And so the whole idea of kind of figuring out the intention of the owner based upon there being a siman or not is slightly problematic. And that kind of brings us to Tashma, the final Tashma. And so if you look here in the green is where our Tashma begins, and in the purple is when we learn that actually that Rava is rejected in this Tashma, and Abaye comes out ahead. So there are not many lines to do, but it's a little confusing, so bear with me here. Okay, so here we go. So first of all, it begins like this. Rabbi Yochanan said in the name of Rabbi Yishmael ben Yotzadak, from where do we know that an object that's swept away by the river is permitted to everyone? So meaning an object, so the Braita says, this Braita says, an object swept away by a river is permitted to everyone. By the way, that's much more forceful than this kind of statement right here, that the object could be permitted to the finder in that situation. But here we're saying actually an object that's swept away from the river is permitted always to the person who finds it. And then what we get here is a dichtiv, or we know this as a shene amar, and that's a sign that what's going to come next, in quotes, question number 4. Right, that means we're getting something from the Torah. And here's what the Torah says. Torah, if you remember, these were the two verses we brought up from the Torah, the two verses that talk about lost and found. And look at that, we're really getting to them. This was from slide number 152, and now we're on slide number 520. And I want to focus specifically on this side, specifically on these questions. So first of all, read over this, because my question number 5 is, when they talk about same thing, you must do the same thing. What is that same thing that they're telling to do? That's question number 5. Okay. And now what I'd like you to do is, Rashi is going to say something about these words, this verse, and they're going to say, I'm noticing some extra words that seem so obvious that they don't need to have been written, because because they were, they must teach us something that I would not know otherwise, that I would not otherwise know. Do you see it too? So remember, this goes by the whole assumption that God is not a blabbermouth. Whatever God writes and doesn't write in the Torah is there specifically to teach us something. And when we see words that probably don't need to be there but are, they're there for a very specific reason, and it's our job as sensitive readers to figure out what is God's intention. Okay, so look at this verse, please, and this is question number 6. And find for me what you believe the superfluous, the words in this part, in purple, which words do not need to be there? And question number 6 is which of those words? And question number 7 is why. Okay, here we go. So here's question number 8. Question number 8, here are those words right here, the words from him. And just explain to me why Rashi would believe that the from him doesn't need to be here, even if you chose something else. Okay, and this is what Rashi says next. Kra yeterahu. These are words that are extra, and they're here lashmoinan to teach us she'enan abud ella hemeni, that the lost object is not lost to anyone but from him. That these words from him are telling us this is an object that is lost from the loser's perspective, but, and that's what it says, these additional words are here to teach us that the thing that is lost is defined as lost because it is lost only from him, the owner, and we can lost. So question number 9 is lost to the blank. Question number 10 is but findable by blank. And what the Talmud is going to say is, oh, this is telling us that we need to return objects that are if something is lost to the owner, but actually is findable by others. And that becomes something I need to return. Okay. And so here's where it gets a little funky, because now we're going to basically make an inference from this. Now we're going to try to see from this logic if we can figure out the opposite of this, right? Right? And see if we can do it. So, right. So if something is lost to the owner but findable by others, then this is something I need to return. But question number 11 is, so if something is lost to the owner and blank to others, that's question 11. Then 12, then this is something I can blank. That's 12. And here it is. So this is what the Talmud is going to say. So if something is lost to the owner and lost to others, which is really our case of that Breita that was just mentioned, then this is something that the finder can keep, right? Where do we know that an object is swept by the river is permitted to everyone? So here's their steps again. Step one was look at the additional words that don't need to be there from him. Step number 2, and this teaches us that if something is lost from the owner but findable by others, basically lost from him and only him, but findable by others, this is something I need to return. And from there, we can also make an inference that if something is lost to the owner and lost to others, then this is something I, the finder, can keep. Now, again, this logic might be faulty, but this is the logic that is being used in this case. And then we're going to do one more move. So this is basically, so if we call this move number 1 is find the extraneous words. Move number 2 is figure out what it means. Move number 3 is to figure out the opposite of that. And what's important here to know is we're not even talking about a siman. We're talking about stuff whether it has a siman or whether it doesn't have a siman. All of a sudden, this is stuff that doesn't matter. If it is lost to the owner and findable by others, whether it has a siman or not, this is something I need to return. Whether it's something lost to the owner and lost to others, this is something that I can. This is something that that a finder can keep, whether it has a siman or another. So I guess what's interesting here is, well, maybe I even said our final answer, but here's what we say here: the isura, what is forbidden, is similar to what is permitted. And what do we just say was permitted? If something is lost to the owner but findable by others, then this is something I. Then this is if something is lost to the owner and lost to others, this is something that I can keep. Okay, so this is kind of where we are, and we're going to learn from this something that's actually going to end up supporting Abaye and hurting Rava. And what is that? Okay, so first of all, these phrases here. And what is forbidden has to be similar to that which is allowed. We just saw the permitted case, which is right here for what's allowed. An object swept away by a river is permitted, and we said, why is that permitted? That's again question number 13. 13, why is it permitted? It's permitted because it's lost to you and it's lost to everyone. No one can actually find that. But if someone finds that stuff that's lost to you and lost to everyone, then they can keep it. Which actually Aaron brought up in class, said, wait a second, but if it's actually found, then it's findable. Not necessarily. We can define something as not findable, and still someone by chance finds it, right? If it comes up in the ocean and we're there, that wasn't something that anyone thought was findable. It never entered your mind that was something that you were going to find. It just so happened. So we can still define it. So what we're going to say is that is the case of permitted. And so we're saying that same idea has to be similar to what is forbidden. And here's what we do. So we say the following. Let's see if we can figure this out. Just as an object that is lost to me and can't be found by others is permitted to the finder, right? Like this Breita says, A, if it does have a siman, and B, even if it doesn't have a siman. Now let's see if we can fill in these. So too in a case of something that is 14, an object that is lost to me and 15 is 16. Even if it blank 17, and even if it 18 doesn't. So, right. So too in the case of something that is that is prohibited, that is forbidden. An object that is lost to me and can be found by others is permitted, not permitted, is forbidden to the finder to keep if it has a siman and even if it doesn't have a siman. Okay, so really here's your answer here. Okay, and just you need to appreciate again how this is being done. They have this idea here, and we learn through our 3 steps that an object that's lost to me and can't be found by others is permitted to the finder if it does have a siman, or even if it doesn't have a siman. They're not even talking about how the siman changes that. And then we say in the Talmud, what is permitted has to be similar to what is prohibited. And so then we try to say the opposites. From this, I can infer, since this is talking about an object that's lost to me and can't be found by others, so too it must be the case of what's forbidden. An object that is lost to me and can be found by others is forbidden to the finder if it has a siman and doesn't have a siman. Now, all of a sudden, we should look at this statement number 2, and say, there's something about this statement that is either against Rava or against Abaye. What is that part of the statement? What part of the statement? That's question number 19. And what part of the statement is that? So there's a part of the statement that is against Rava. So what do we know that Rava back here? Wait a second. So what do we know that we talked about Rava way back here a few minutes ago? That Rava with an object that has no siman would always say that object belongs to the owner, because even if the finder, because even if the owner has not declared hefker, they will in the future. Abaye says it all depends on whether that person has declared it hefker or not. But if they haven't declared it hefker, it doesn't belong to the owner. This is an object with no siman. So now let's go back to our case here, and we'll see what the Talmud is stating and why this statement has to be against either Rava or Abaye. So too in the case of something that is forbidden, right? The owner cannot, an object that's lost to me and can be found by others is forbidden if it has a siman and if it doesn't have a siman. But wait a second. We just saw a picture of an object with no siman, and that is the telltale sign by Rava that you can keep it because the owner will eventually declare that hefker. And basically and that so that should be allowed. And actually what we're saying here is that that's forbidden. You can't take it even if it doesn't have a siman. So this completely goes against Rava, right? And that's why we can say this is a rejection of Rava. And again, so in 20, please explain that again one last time. And that's why it's a tiuvta de Rava tiuvta. And here's the case, right? Rava would claim that actually, oh, the loser is going to declare it hefker, but our case right here says, oh, that's a case of that money has no siman, and yet still it is forbidden. That supports Abaye and no longer Rava. So our final piece is about assumptions. When we looked at we started these questions. When we looked at the Torah, we asked ourselves, what are the assumptions that the Torah is saying about lost and found? What does the finder assume about the person? And the Torah says what? And this is question number 21. And the Mishnah comes in and starts giving ideas like chayav lakriz, mitziot shelo, siman, hefker. So what does the Mishnah do? And then the question is, all of these tashmas for question number 23, what is the Talmud trying to do? What is the Talmud trying to teach us as well? So I think our answers are this, that the Torah is trying to say people always want back what's lost no matter what. The Mishnah is trying to say people will try to get stuff back of value and stuff they can prove is theirs. If it has no value to them or they have no hope of getting it back, they will not try to get it back. And then the question is, what is the Talmud saying? And I'm going to leave that up to you. Right. I think it's trying to say that intention does matter. That we can keep an object if the person basically declares is like gives up hope, and if the person doesn't give up hope, we cannot. Um, but I guess it's a little more complicated than that because really all of these tashmas were an exploration of intention and the interplay between siman and intention and lack of siman and no intention. Okay. The final piece I want to do is to introduce you to what we're going to be studying on the video next week, and it's just to ask you the following question. Let us pretend that it is the first night of Passover, and on the first night of Passover, there is a mitzvah you're obligated to eat matzah. However, here is a guy who on the first night of Passover is tied up, and he is force-fed matzah. The question is, has this person fulfilled his obligation of eating matzah or not? That's question number 24. Please send me the answers to these questions via email.